Hey guys, what is up? Grunnax here. It's been a while since I've uploaded a video, and as I've been busy with work and uni for some time now, but I'm working a lot less and I have time to finally make more videos, and I'm back with Facecam and green screen. So, the expansion for World of Warcraft is Legion. I am probably going to stop playing my Hunter as my primary class, like I have since vanilla, but it's time for a change of pace. Uh, I will still probably play my hunter here and there in the next expansion pack and make guides for him because I will always be a hunter at heart. However, I've been playing an enhancement shaman lately and experimenting with a particular elemental build which has proven to be quite successful as well. I've also been doing some RBGs with Arcane Mage. So for Legion, I'm looking at either playing a mage or a shaman for next expansion. I'm going to go through what information we have on both classes currently for the Legion release and what sort of skill combos we'll be able to pull off, etc. This video I'll be starting off with the Arcane Mage. So to start things off, with some of the items we're going to be able to obtain is, for example, these set of risks that will make it so that our Arcane Barrage affects an additional enemy per charge of your Arcane Power expended. So this now means that your Arcane Barrage can hit up to a total of 9 targets with 4 Arcane stacks, which is really cool. So we'll get into the talent calculator. So before we get into that, we'll just go into the class skills. We will have Frost Nova, Blink, and Ice Barrier on base. Obviously teleports, Polymorph, Refreshments, Counterspell, Slow Fall, Portals, obviously. Time Warp, we still have Spell Steal. That's pretty much it. We have lost a couple of skills, you'll probably notice. So now into the spec. We have Arcane Barrage, Arcane Blast, Arcane Charge. Arcane Charge is no longer going to be a debuff. It's being moved into like a resource bar. It's kind of like, think Warlock Soul Shards. You build them up, expend them. Or at least that's what I'm seeing what they're going to do. They're going to put it below our mana bar, just so it's easier to monitor. Instead of having to look at a debuff box that's like this big with a freaking number in it, which is pretty cool. Arcane Missiles still have. One of the new actives we've been given is Displacement. So it's a 1.5 minute cooldown that will allow you for the next 4 seconds to cast Blink, and it will not trigger its cooldown, which means you can blink up to 4 times if you've got a good enough connection. And not have ping issues. You should be able to blink 4 times in a row. Really cool. Arcane Explosion, Slow, Evocation, Arcane Power, Mage Armor, and Mastery. Now, Mastery has changed. It used to be increase your arcane damage based on how much mana you had left. So it did more damage with more mana you had. The new one is it's going to give you mana and mana regeneration, and then half the amount of that percentage is also going to increase the damage bonus from your arcane charges to affect all your skills. So assuming you can get 50% mastery, 100% mastery, you'll have 100% increased mana pool, 100% increased mana regenerate, and you'll have a 50% increased damage per arcane charge built. So that would basically mean at 4 stacks you would have 800% increased damage as opposed to 400, or is no sorry 400% as opposed to 200%. So it's basically a lot of damage you can do with that, and it's all the time now, as opposed to based on how much mana you have. So it's more reliable, consistent damage, which is a really good plus that they've added. Alright, so talents. We have Arcane Familiar. It's a 1 minute cooldown to summon a familiar that attacks your enemies. And the attacks will have a chance to grant you an arcane charge. Kind of cool. This companion cannot be targeted or damaged by enemies, so it cannot be stopped. It's 30 seconds of we don't know what the damage is like, and possible arcane charge building. Pretty cool. Next is Static. Very, very, very cool. 1 minute cooldown. When activated, your next 4 arcane blasts you cast will be instant. Really good for running a combo where you need to burn someone very quickly. Get up to 4 stacks. Pop that. 4 arcane blasts at full At, assuming you can get 100% mastery, that would be then 400% increased damage per Arcane Blast. Something also to note, Arcane Blast has had its scale increased. It used to be, I'm pretty sure, 125% of your spell power, and it's now 200%. They've also increased Arcane Barrage. Arcane Barrage was similar, or actually, what is Arcane Blast currently? Oh, but Arcane Blast currently, from memory, I'll just switch it back to live calculator. I think it's 70%, 75% or something. Yeah, 74.7% for Arcane Barrage. Hits like a fucking wet fish. Shit for PvP at the moment. Anyway, in Legion, it's going to have a 250% spell power ratio, which means then increased by, then increased by, if you have 100% mastery, by 400% at 4 stacks. We'll break the stacks, but it's going to be a huge burst of damage to pop at the end of, say, 4 instant cast Arcane Blasts followed by an Arcane Barrage that's going to hit slightly harder than an individual blast. So a lot of damage to be done in a very short period of time in that particular combo. It's very cool. Torrent, very good for AoE encounter or RBG where you need to do lots of cleave damage to, say, an enemy team, a grouped enemy team. So Arcane Barrage hits, when it hits additional targets, so all the hits that are not the primary, will take 100% damage instead. So basically all secondary targets will take the same amount of damage as the primary. Really good. Means you're applying whatever damage you apply with that barrage to the primary, it's going to hit everyone else, especially if you're running those Storm Tempest risks that you managed to get dropped during the expansion. You'll hit up to 9 targets. Really good. And I'll explain how that can be further influenced later on. Shimmer, when you take damage, there is a 30% chance for the cooldown of Blink to be reset. This effect cannot occur more than once every 30 seconds. When I first saw this, I thought this would be absolutely amazing. And then I realized the problem is it's with the current tier, you've got Cauterize, which has been buffed. It's kind of, they've put Blazing Speed mixed in with it. So Blazing Speed's gone. So when you Cauterize, you'll have Blazing Speed for 6 seconds pretty much. And it will suppress movement speed, reducing effects and all that stuff. So pretty cool, but to charge Ice Block, I personally think Ice Block is a must-have. Yeah, it's just my opinion. Just complete immune to damage for 10 seconds. If you're really getting hammered and focused, you can pop that. Healers can heal you back up when they arrive, or if they arrive, whatever. But this top tier, I think, depends on what you're doing. I definitely see Static being more beneficial for, say, Arena. Torrent being more beneficial for RBG, and I'll explain why later with some of the things you can combo the Arcane Barrage with to do some seriously nasty AoE damage. So these two are probably going to be situational. Most likely Arena and Dueling, Torrent, RBG, so group fighting. Third tier, you've got Mirror Image, Rune of Power, cool PvE. We're not even going to look at that. So Mirror Image, create 3 copies of yourself, cast spells, your spells for 40 seconds, 2-minute cooldown. Always is a pretty good skill. Or Incanter's Flow. I'm personally going to be running Mirror Image over the Incanter's Flow, which yo-yos between 20% increased damage and 4% increased damage, cycling every 10 seconds. And I'll explain why when we get later into the PvP talents for Arcane as to why I'm running Mirror Image. Next, we have Supernova. It's going down, so we only have 1 use of it. Does 190% spell power to the primary target, and the primary target will take 100% extra, but all enemies within 8 yards will also be hit as well. Pretty cool, but not going to take it due to the fact of the combos that can be used with Charged Up on a 30-second cooldown, instantly giving you 4 arcane charges. For example, going Charged Up Static. But you can further make this even more nasty when I get further on into the artifact calculator with some of the
effects that your artifact weapon will play into your arcane charges, and you'll get to see some very, very interesting combinations. Words of Power, channeling evocation now generates 1 charge of arcane missiles every 2 seconds. Yeah, arcane missiles isn't bad, it's just charged up's better for what I will reveal after I get through these talents. So, in my opinion, charged up. Next here we've got Ice Flows. You all know what that is. 20-second recharge. 3 charges can be used while casting and is not affected by the global cooldown, but allows you to cast your next spell while moving. I think this is really good for Arcane because it is a pretty immobile spec, and when you need to be mobile for whatever reason, I think Ice Flows is great. Ring of Forest. I'll put it to you this way. If people are expecting you to CC as a mage, I can understand that. But as an Arcane Mage that is there to be glass cannon, not as a crowd control, because they don't exactly have a crowd control kit, you shouldn't run Ring of Frost just because it's not your job. In Arena or RPG, you should have a team. If you're running an Arcane Mage, the team should be revolved around a team that can CC and peel for the Arcane Mage, and the Arcane Mage is the primary damage source. That's what Arcane's been designed for. And I just think that you shouldn't really need Ring of Frost. It's just my personal opinion. Ice Ward is good for defensive use, not gonna lie. It gives you 2 charges to your Frost Nova, so I would personally choose between Ice Flows and Ice Ward. I just think Ice Flows is a bit better, giving you some mobility options. Next, you have Nether Tempest. Does 40% of spell power. It's arcane damage of 12 seconds to the target, and 3.4% of spell power times 12 to all enemies within 10 yards. Limit 1 target. Damage is increased per charge of arcane charge, so this could be quite interesting for AoE damage. Excuse me. Anyway, so this could be interesting, but I like Erosion a lot better, and I'll get to that later. Alright, so you got Unstable Magic. Arcane Blast will have a 15% chance to explode on impact, dealing an additional 50% damage to the target and all other enemies within 8 yards. Fucking hell. Sorry. So yeah, 15% chance. Now, this is kind of cool because it is 50% more damage to the target, and it will deal and to all other enemies within 8 yards. It can be really good because it can make that even for single. It's good for even for single target, but it is a 15% chance. Whereas I would prefer to have Erosion, which is basically like having 2 arcane powers. So the difference is with this, it's a 1-minute cooldown. Instead of increasing your damage, it increases your damage on the specific target you put it on by 20% for 10 seconds. Now this is really interesting because if you apply it to a target and you've got Torrent, if you hit that target with Barrage, whatever the damage, because all that damage is going to be increased by Erosion on the primary, but because the damage is already set so that the primary target or the secondaries will take the same amount, so you're technically, when you Barrage, you're going to hit everything for the eroded damage. So I personally think Erosion's really good for it's just more damage, just for complete burst in whether you're running static or torrent for single target or AoE situations. Next, you've got Overpowered, so casting Arcane Missiles extends Arcane Power by 2 seconds. Kind of cool, but the other 2 options I feel are better. Quickening, great skill. If you're not being targeted and you're sitting in the back and just chocking away at the primary target in an RPG and it's just to melt it, every Arcane Blast and Arcane Missiles is going to grant you 2% haste for 6 seconds stacking, and it does not say that it has a limit. So it could be an ever-stacking haste buff that gets to the point where if they don't deal with you, you're going to murder the enemy team. So the only downside is when you cast Arcane Barrage, it clears the stacks. So this is this is really good for burning your mana for when you go to use Evocation with one of the artifact talents. I'll get to that later. But I personally prefer Arcane Orb just because it's another way to get to max stacks of Arcane charges. The damage doesn't bother me too much because it's not that great anyway. It's for the Arcane charge generation. because you can basically go build up to 4 stacks, barrage an enemy team, hit 9 people, followed by charged up for a second arcane barrage, hit 9 people, followed by Arcane Orb for a third Arcane Barrage to hit 9 people, and you're going to do quite a lot of cleave damage, which you can then make even worse, which I'll get to later. But I personally feel this is what I'm probably going to be running on my Arcane Mage. Ice Block, Mirror Image, Charged Up, Ice Flows, Erosion, and Arcane Orb. But for Static and Torrent, I will run depending on whether I'm running Arena or RBG. So as for the PvP honor talents, so first tier you've got PvP trinket pretty much. That's what I'm going to be running. Adaption, a full loss of control effects with a duration of 5 seconds or longer will be removed shortly after being applied. This effect has a 1.5 minute cooldown. Now, this is a slightly better than the trinket, but you don't get to choose when you want to use it, so this can be a bad thing, like where you might not want to break a rogue's first stun, because usually most people will break the rogue's second stun due to the fact that the second stun is longer. So there's no real choice in use of this. This I feel is probably more suited to PvE, but we'll have to see how that goes. But otherwise, I currently see the PvP trinket being better. Relentless. Duration of incoming crowd control effects reduced by 25%. Now, assuming humans get to keep their racial trinket, humans are going to just get even more better for anti-CC in PvP, being able to still keep double trinkets for damage and still have PvP trinket, and on top of it with Relentless have 25% reduced from all crowd control effects. So, assuming they get to keep that, that's going to be nasty on humans. Just ridiculous. I really hope they give humans a new racial. Just that way everyone's got a somewhat level playing field when it comes to avoiding crowd control. That's just my opinion, but we'll see what happens. But I personally feel that the trinket's the best option. Next, we got Train of Thought. Damage increased by 15%, but being attacked will cancel this effect for 8 seconds. This could be cool for Arcane, but inevitably being Arcane, with the amount of damage we're going to be able to put out, people are going to be trying to hit you. So this, I feel, is not that great. Mind Quickness increases haste just passively 15%. Absolutely amazing. 15% haste flat. Love it. Faster casts, more damage getting out faster. And then you have Initiation, not yet implemented because they're not sure yet, but critical chance increased by 30% on targets at or above 80% health. It's okay. Arcane will do probably, if I've done my calculations right, should be able to do, or at least the level 100 tier, because that's all we can work off is stats from level 100. So we're looking at, say, pre-release. Arcane should be able to do more than someone, like basically do around 20% of someone's health even without that, and basically waste. It's a waste, in my opinion, for Arcane anyway. So I think Mind Quickness is going to be best. Next, we got Netherwind Armor. Reduces the critical strike damage from spells by 20%. Really good. Fuck you, Chaos Bolts. So you're going to take less critical strike damage from spells that crit. Burning Determination reduces the duration of interrupts by 30%. So if you get interrupted by a 6-second interrupt, like counterspell, oops. It's going to be reduced by 1.8, giving you a lockout of your school, of the School of Magic that was interrupted, by 4.2 instead of 6. It's pretty cool. But for Arcane, you have a 15-second blink, 15-second cooldown blink. Prismatic Cloak. After you blink, spells have a miss chance increased to you by 100% for 2.5 seconds. So you will be spells will miss you after a blink for the next 2.5 seconds. Now, I'm going to really tell you this now. Prismatic Cloak's going to be better simply because one of the artifact talents can reduce at max rank of 3, reduce Blink's cooldown by 8 seconds, making it a 7-second cooldown every blink, which means you only have a 5-second window where you can be hit by spells, so casters. Prismatic Cloak, obvious choice for Arcane. It's just going to be fucking ridiculous. Kleptomania. Spell Steal now has a 15-second cooldown, but it will steal all spells from the target that obviously can be stolen. So this is really good for, say, when Pallies pop Blessing of Protection. They've got other couple of buffs on them like Hots, and you feel like you're wasting your mana spamming on that Spell Steal, trying to get rid of the bop, and it just gets rid of all the other buffs instead, or sorry, takes them. This, you could be bursting someone, and then the Pally's like, fucking bop, and then you can just be like, cool, Spell Steal, and just take all things off him. All Hots, fucking Stay of Execution, bop, boom, gone, and continue bursting, which is amazing. I personally am going to be running this. Dense Ice increases the amount of your ice barrier absorbs by 30%, but it will only absorb physical damage. So I personally don't like this because I like to be able to absorb damage from all types because, well, yeah. It is kind of interesting because it might be interesting to run because you can only be hit by spells in a 5-second window because of the way Blink's going to work with Prismatic Cloak. This might be more interesting because you're going to be focused by melees, but with how often you're going to blink, melees are going to get so mad at trying to stick to freaking mages, or at least arcane mages in this case, with 7-second blink. So this still could be quite interesting, providing you not only protection from the magic spells via Prismatic Cloak, but you now have an enhanced defense against physical damage at the expense of some magic, the fact that you can't absorb magic damage now. And Temporal Shield, 45-second cooldown, instant cast, envelops you in a temporal shield for 4 seconds, and all damage that was taken while shielded will instantly be restored back when the shield ends. So if you take 50,000 damage, shield ends, you'll get 50,000 health back. Really cool. I just feel that a full purge via one spell steal without wasting your mana is the best, in my opinion. I like it. Then we have Concentrated Power. Arcane Power lasts 5 seconds less, but the damage bonus is increased by 10%. 10%! And that now brings it down to a 10-second buff, I believe, instead of 15. It's a lot of damage. 30% increased damage instead of 20. But I feel that Torment the Weak will be better because increases your critical strike chance by 30% on targets affected by your slow spell or any movement slow effect. If you could get, say, a flat 30% crit with, let's say, 100% mastery, so 50% increased damage per arcane charge, you now have, because you're always going to make sure you have the target with your slow, or if someone else is slowing it, to make sure you basically will always have a 60% chance for all your spells to crit, which is going to ramp your damage ridiculously. So I feel that Torment the Weak is going to be a better option than Concentrated Power. And with flat 15% haste, my current mage build has 30% crit, 15% flat haste, and around 75% mastery. So mastery ratios are probably going to change because they're changing the mastery completely, but that's just to give you an idea on what I currently have. So let's assume you can get 30% crit on base with all your gear, and aiming for 15% haste. You have 30% haste on base as well, which is quite a lot, which means you're going to have very short cast arcane blasts, which I think is going to be really good. Presence of Mind is also an interesting option because you can chain that with static to then, instead of doing 4 instant cast arcane blasts, you can do 5, or in the need of instant cast polymorphs, for example. It's a really good utility skill. I feel Torment the Weak is probably the more stronger one here, although Presence of Mind is, if you want, I suppose, an extra instant cast arcane blast when you're doing the a lot of damage in a short amount of time combo, or if you're needing an instant poly for whatever reason. But
Presence of Mind is still a good choice, but I feel these two are the best for this tier. Then we have Temporal Anomaly. Your Arcane Blast reduces the cooldown if you blink by 5 seconds. Okay, blink and you fire off an Arcane Blast. Blinks back already, pretty much. Because by the time you've casted it, 1 or 2 seconds has gone by maybe. Which is the 1 or 2 seconds of the 7 seconds that leaves 5 left. Arcane Blast goes off, munches those 5 up. You got blink back. You can basically blink, Arcane Blast, blink. Really cool, but I like Mirrored Entity over it because anytime you blink, you conjure a mirror image of yourself dealing 30% of your damage. Now, think on this. Blink, you got 1 mirror image. Hit Displacement and cast 4 blinks. You now have 5 mirror images. Then you pop mirror image for an extra 3. You have 8 mirror images on the field. That's a lot of mirror images that are going to do, even though it's 30% of your damage, they still get their Arcane Charge stack with Arcane Blast, which means it is going to, their damage will ramp when they hit 4 stacks. So I feel Mirrored Entity is just amazing. And Mass Invisibility, it's basically Cloak of Shadows. Cloak of Concealment, like the rogues have. You and your allies within 40 yards will instantly become invisible, but it's only for 5 seconds, and any damage will cancel the effect. 1 minute cooldown. Kind of cool. Mirrored Entity. That's just my opinion. I love it. Alright, onto the calculator. So, onto the lovely parts of Luneth, the great stuff of the Magna, which is the Arcane Artifact. So, to start things off, why I was saying you can make those instant cast Arcane Blasts and all these other combos a lot stronger. Power of Egwin, which is when you reach 4 Arcane Charges, you're infused with the Power of Egwin. Now, what this does is this. When you reach 4 charges, you are infused with the Power of Egwin, which will double your arcane damage for 6 seconds. So if you're at 400% increased arcane damage with 4 stacks of arcane charges, that is 800% increased arcane damage, followed by arcane power and erosion, so 840%. And you're doing 4 of these arcane blasts, instant cast, followed by an arcane barrage as well. Alright, to give you an idea of the damage, you're looking at, so 4 Arcane Blasts at 200% of your spell power, increased by 800% plus 40% from Arcane Power and Erosion. So the idea here is to go static, charged up, Arcane Power, Erosion, 4 Arcane Blasts, Arcane Barrage. So you're looking at a total with the 4 Arcane Blasts, let's assume at level 100 with, let's just say 8k spell power, for a point of reference, is 537k non-crit with those 4 Arcane Blasts, then followed by 168k non-crit Arcane Barrage. This is not including crits, so a total of 705k damage non-crit. That's more than anyone's health pool can get currently, except for maybe a Guardian Druid that's stacking stamina trinkets. Essentially, you could one-pop someone, or in the case of if they crit with non-tanks and maybe healers, you could probably kill 2 people with going blast, blast, assuming they both crit, blast, blast if they crit, or if you fail, if you need one and then 1 bit to finish it off, Arcane Barrage followed. Or if you could 2-shot, assuming you can 2-shot with this, assuming both crit, if you run Presence of Mind, you could kill 3 people with this combo. Just bang, 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 bang. 3 people. Just splat. So this looks interesting, but the game's going to be balanced around 110, so we don't know what the stats and health are going to be like then, as to how much spell power we're going to have, what people's health pools are going to be like. But in the pre-release, I can see Arcane being like in the pre-release for this expansion, where they were 2-shotting people with Supernova. So, except we're going to be seeing it a lot worse, because they're going to be able to do it with a whole bunch of other shit. Anyway, you get the idea. Alright, to continue on, we're looking at increasing the damage of Arcane Barrage by 6%, and at rank 3, 13, so an increasing in increments of 4 and then 3%. Might of the Guardians, increasing arcane damage, just all arcane damage by 13%, and another 13% arcane damage across the board. Blasting Rod increases the damage of your arcane blast by a further 8%. Increase the radius of arcane explosion by 4 yards. Big whoop, arcane explosion. It's now increased by 7 yards. That makes it, I think. Good question. I'm not even sure what its base range is. So 17 yards. It's a big explosion, which is going to be good for fighting rogues. It's going to piss them off. But other than that, it's not that great. Egwin's Wrath increases the critical strike chance of all arcane spells by, at rank 3, 8%. So more crit. Egwin's Imperative increases the duration of arcane power at rank 3 by 8 seconds. So now your arcane power is going to last 15 plus 8. So 23, I think 23? Yeah, 23 seconds. So that's going to be really good. And this is the bullshit one here. Everywhere at once. Reduce the cooldown of Blink by 8 seconds at rank 3. Say hello to 3-second blinks. 7-second cooldown blinks. Amethyst Awakening, increase your mana pool by 200%. 300%, 400%. Now you're probably wondering, why the hell would you want to increase your mana pool so much? This is why. Bigger the mana pool, the more damage you're going to do with one particular skill. Your Evocation makes you invulnerable and causes you to deal massive damage based on the mana Evocation restores. So the bigger your mana pool is, and if you empty yourself on purpose for someone that's refusing to die, and say you pop Time Warp and a whole bunch of haste buffs that make this thing cast in, say, 1 second as opposed to 6, and it can't be stopped because you're invulnerable anyway, but you want the damage to kind of hit as fast as possible. So say you channel it in 1 second. Say at level 100 you have, with this, plus your mastery, 500k mana. You burn yourself to 0. Okay? So you've burned yourself to 0. You're going to pop... where is it? Mana Bomb. Yeah, so you'll burn your mana to 0 by casting Arcane Blasts and Arcane Barrages, I suppose. But then you're going to use Arcane Power when you hit the 0 mana, Erosion, Time Warp. Then you're going to use Charged Up to get your 4 stacks. Now, you don't need the 4 Arcane stacks. They're not going to influence your Evocation. But the double Arcane damage we get from that buff for 6 seconds will. So you've got 40% increase from your Arcane Power and Time Warp. Erosion. You've got haste buff from Time Warp by 30%. You already got 30% haste from having 15% base and Mind Quickening, so you get 60% haste. And assuming you were running Quickening, all those Arcane Blasts you were spamming to get to 0 mana is going to be really stacked up, so you're looking at maybe 80% haste, which is going to really reduce that cast time. So let's assume that Evocation is going to do 1 damage per mana restored. It's probably not going to be that much because that would be really dumb with how much damage it'll be able to do. So that's essentially 400k damage in 1 second. Or in the case of, because of the power of Egwin doubling arcane damage, it's going to be 500k because you had 500k mana. You're going to do 1 million arcane damage in 1 second just to restore your mana to full, and you can't be stopped doing it. It's not necessarily going to be that much damage because we don't know what the scale is, but it's just give you an idea of how cool that we now have on offensive use for Evocation for hard-to-kill targets. Arcane Rebound, your Arcane Barrage can now bounce up to 5 times, and if it does, it will explode in supernova, dealing massive damage. So let's look at, say you've got Torrent, so all secondary targets will take the same as the primary. Arcane Orb for more charge generation. Your Storm Tempest wrists, so you can hit up to 9 people total with Arcane Barrage. So you'll build up to 3 arcane charges, use arcane power and erosion, now get your 4th charge, then you'll now have the power of Egwin for double damage. You'll fire off an arcane barrage at 840% damage. Or sorry, increase 840% increased damage, and because of torrent, secondary targets will take the same amount as well. And thanks to the Storm Tempest, you hit 9 targets with it. So let's say we're in RPG and there's 9 people at Blacksmith. Big mingle at Blacksmith. You do this combo, you're going to hit 9 people for 250% of your spell power, increased by a further 840%. Now you're going to assume that the arcane rebound from the staff, let's just assume it bounces, all 9 bounce there 5 times. It's 9 plus 45 arcane barrages with 9 supernovas detonating on each other. So totaling 54 arcane barrages potentially. Now, in a real situation, you're not going to get that lucky. But this is just to give you an idea of the magnitude of the damage. So 168k times 54 equals 9 million damage, roughly. Divide that by 9 people, it's about 1 million per person. Non-crit. This is non-crit. So this is also not including the supernova discharge. So there's more damage, I just haven't calculated. This is just to explain how BS this is. This is assuming at level 100 with 8k spell power. So after the first barrage you've used, you're then going to use charged up, fire a second one, do the same thing up to a maximum of 54 bounces. Not necessarily going to get that many, because nobody's that lucky. If you are, give me your luck, please, because I want it. And then you can then follow up with an arcane orb and hit enough targets to give you another 4 stacks, and do a third one in very quick succession. You can get 3 arcane barrages at full stacks, doing 250% plus 840% per bolt. It's going to be crazy AoE burst. So Arcane Rebound is going to be crazy. Archmage's Fortitude reduces damage taken by 13% at rank 3. Increases the damage of Arcane Explosion by 13% at max rank. Arcane Missiles now fires 2 additional missiles at rank 3. Well, we don't know, they haven't modified that yet. Increases your chance to trigger Arcane Missiles by a percentage not yet defined. Increases the damage of Arcane Missiles by 13% at max rank. Your arcane spells have a chance to summon an image of Egwin to assist you. Look, more mirror images! Except we got some epic ass mirror image that we don't really know what it's going to do yet. So, Arcane has some really wacky combos that are just, for the moment, seem really overpowered. But the spec has a lot more depth now. It's not just spam one button. There's going to be multiple combos you're going to run depending on the situation. It's just going to be a more dynamic spec. And also with the power of Egwin, it makes you want to, when you're not running your combos, to build to 4 stacks and then break with Arcane Barrage. If you've got enough haste, you should be able to build back up to those 4 charges before 6 seconds, which means you should be able to permanently maintain that double damage buff. Which means Arcane's going to be putting out a lot of damage if left to stand still and cast. And sticking to the bastard's going to be a pain, and dealing damage because they just have only a 5-second window in between blinks where magic can hurt them, and melees are going to have a hard enough time staying on you because you got blink more often than their gap closers come off cooldown. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Hope this was interesting information for you. Next video I'm going to do is on the Fire Mage. Then I'm going to probably look at the Enhancement Shaman, then the Elemental Shaman. I'm probably going to come back to Frost, but I haven't found anything that makes really stands out to changes, but I'll still probably make one anyway. And then I'll probably come and following that do the Resto Shaman, just so I cover all 3 specs for the classes.
So I hope you enjoyed. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.